Predestination. You know, it's one of those words that can just make a room go quiet. It's a concept that has challenged theologians and thinkers for centuries, and it really touches on our deepest questions about free will, justice, and the very nature of God. But what does it actually mean? All right, let's dive in and unpack this. So here's how we're going to tackle this whole thing. We're going to build our understanding from the ground up. First, we'll start with a solid working definition. Then we'll get into the absolute foundation of the doctrine, which is God's sovereignty. From there, well, we're going to face the toughest questions head on. The problem of evil, whether we're all just puppets, and if this whole idea is even fair. All right, first things first, before we can even begin to debate it, we've got to define it, right? We need a clear, solid anchor for the rest of our discussion. I mean, this is the question that really gets right to the heart of it all, isn't it? Is the ultimate outcome of your life, we're talking heaven or hell, decided before you even get a say in the matter? So here it is, the core definition we'll be working with. At its very heart, predestination is the teaching that our ultimate destiny, our final destination, is in God's hands. And not only that, but that this decision was made from eternity, long before we ever even existed. But here's something that's absolutely crucial to get straight. This isn't about whether God ordained that you'd hit a red light this morning or win the lottery. That's all part of a much bigger idea called providence. What we're zeroing in on here is that one single ultimate question, salvation. Okay, so to really get a handle on predestination, we have to start with the concept it's literally built on top of, the absolute sovereignty of God. This right here is the bedrock of the entire argument. So what do we mean by sovereignty? Well, it means God is the supreme authority of the entire universe. All other power, whether it's from kings or presidents or even the laws of physics, it's all derived from and dependent upon his. The idea is that nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, can happen unless God either directly commands it or permits it. And here's a really powerful way to think about this. Just try to imagine one single molecule in the entire universe that's operating completely outside of God's control, a real rogue agent. What would be the consequence of that? You see the stakes here, right? From this point of view, that one little maverick molecule could be the very thing that unravels, well, everything, all of God's plans. It could completely derail history, prevent his promises from being kept, and throw the entire cosmos into utter chaos. You know, there's a tragic story about a famous race car driver, Bill Vukovich, who lost his life because a tiny 10-cent cotter pin failed. Just think about that. That's how vulnerable we are to chance. The argument here is that a sovereign God simply isn't. In this framework, there are no maverick molecules. There are no 10-cent parts that can derail the divine plan. Okay, this is where it gets really, really tough. Because if God is completely in control of everything, then we have to confront what skeptics for centuries have called the Achilles heel of Christianity. This is the question, isn't it? If a good and all-powerful God sovereignly rules the universe, then where in the world did evil come from? Why does it exist? Did it happen against his will? Well, if so, he's not sovereign. Did he will it to happen? If so, is he truly good? Now, the common answer you'll hear is the free will defense. Man, not God, is the author of sin. Fair enough. But that just pushes the question back a step, doesn't it? If the first humans, Adam and Eve, were created good, where did the desire to sin even come from? An evil action flows from an evil desire, sure, but that desire itself is already a problem. And the text we're looking at is really candid about this. The ultimate origin of that very first impulse toward evil, it remains a profound mystery. So the distinction made here is absolutely critical. The conclusion is that God is not the author of sin. He doesn't do evil. But, and this is the key, for reasons that are tied to his ultimate plan of redemption, he sovereignly chose to permit evil to enter the world. And that leads us directly to the next huge question. If God is sovereignly permitting and ordaining everything that happens, what does that mean for our freedom? Are our choices even real, or are we all just acting out a pre-written script? To untangle this, we need a little toolkit. First, you have a contradiction, like a square circle. It's just logically impossible. Then you have a paradox, which only seems contradictory at first, but can actually be resolved. And finally, you have a mystery, something that is true, but we can't fully comprehend how it's true. Keeping these three categories separate is going to be key. And this is where we hit a really important distinction. The argument is that we often confuse freedom with something else entirely: autonomy. Freedom is the ability to make real choices based on our desires. But autonomy? That means being a law unto yourself, answerable to no higher authority. The point is, you can have freedom under a sovereign ruler, but you can't have autonomy. And that brings us to the resolution. You see, you don't have to be autonomous to be free. The core argument here is that God's sovereignty doesn't actually contradict human freedom. What it's truly incompatible with is human autonomy. If God is sovereign, then by definition, we cannot be a law unto ourselves. So this brings us to our final, and let's be honest, maybe the most personal objection of all. If God chooses to save some people and not others, how can that possibly be fair? How is that just? To understand the argument, we have to define our terms one more time. Justice, that's getting what you deserve. Everything else, everything that is not justice, falls into this big category called non-justice. But here's the thing. Non-justice has two very, very different subcategories. There's mercy, which is getting a good thing you don't deserve, and then there's injustice, which is getting a bad thing you don't deserve. So if we apply this, what it means is that there are two possible outcomes in the end. The unsaved receive justice, and the saved, they receive mercy. One group gets exactly what is deserved, and the other group gets a gift that is completely undeserved. And this is the punchline of the whole argument. In this framework, while not everyone gets mercy, the crucial thing is that no one gets injustice. No one is punished more than they deserve. The saved get grace, and the unsaved get justice. So the bottom line is this. Grace or mercy, by its very nature, has to be voluntary. If God were obligated to give mercy to everyone, well, it wouldn't be mercy anymore, would it? It would be an entitlement. The argument is that God reserves the divine right to grant this unearned gift to whomever he chooses. And that leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. If justice is all anyone can rightly expect, and if mercy is never required, then the ultimate mystery isn't why God doesn't save everyone. The ultimate mystery is, why does he choose to show mercy and save anyone at all?